Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Back, everyone. I am your host, Scott Henderson, and my co-host is Dr. J. We have a guest that we've had a lot of fun talking to in the past, although, Jason, who do we have coming on?
Scott, we have today Paul William Barrett Sr. However, I need to say a little bit in the way of introduction. When I first met Paul, I was immediately, enamored by who he is and what he does. And one of those reasons is the fact that he was born in Indiana, and also that he's a graduate of Ball State, which is down the road, if you will, from where my alma mater of Purdue. So we kind of had this initial connection. And I believe actually, Paul, one of your many children actually have gone to Purdue.
Yes,
You have Purdue connections there. I'm attempting to remember, but welcome to the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Scott. And yes, matter of fact, I have a couple of connections to Purdue, which is so interesting. My daughter graduated from Purdue University, and then I pastored a church in Lafayette. So I have a direct connection with the university. And one of its former presidents, Dr. Jiski, and I are great friends. And
That's right. I remember.
And Dr. Jiski was the first person to raise $1 billion for a public institution. And so that was cool just to have a conversation with him about how he did that. And so we sit down and talk about that and how to generate resources for projects you believe in. And
that's something that you've been doing now for several decades. And in particular, you're a serial entrepreneur, and I mean, behind you, 6, maybe 7 logos of different companies, different things you're involved in. One of your passions seems to be is helping to create generational wealth for people, especially those that really haven't had it. It's like a first generational wealth. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a first generation college student. So I'm the first one in my family to go to college, to graduate from college, to have multiple degrees from college. So I'm literally lead in all those areas. And now my brother and my sister have degrees. And then I have my children that have degrees, my first set of children I was just telling you about. And so I broke that curse of not having the education that will lead you to financial well-being. But as a kid, I learned quickly that it was about being able to create your own wealth. I remember at 6 years old, I had my first lemonade stand, and I learned on that first day what competition was like because my friend across the street, when she saw I had a Kool-Aid stand, lemonade stand, she went and opened up one. So I quickly had to diversify. And so I sold popcorn along with the lemonade stand. And that's where I learned that when you have low cost entry, then it's easy for people to compete with you. So she went and got popcorn. But I got her on the third thing. And that's because I was in Cub Scouts. We had learned how to make caramel balls, with the brown sugar. And so I went and had caramel balls. And so in that one day, I diversified 3 times just to keep ahead of the competition. And she was so frustrated because she didn't know how to make caramel balls. And that was my first foray into what it's like to create wealth. That you come up with that idea, you provide great customer service, and then people not only pay you what you ask, but they give you more than what you asked. And that's when I was 6 years old. Then I had a paper route. I had 2, Indianapolis Star and Indianapolis News. They're morning and evening. I had both routes. I did both things, and I'll never forget. Have you ever been to the Indianapolis 500?
I never have.
Oh my God. So what they would do back then would get a bunch of people that want to sell newspapers at the races. They put us back on the back of a truck and give us a bundle of paper. Well, I figured out the people down there where they were drunk don't read. So I separated myself from the rest of the group and went up to the grandstands where people were coming from all over the world. And I remember this is my statement, Scott. Uh, get your souvenir edition of the Indianapolis Star, and I would tell them how much it is, and I'll always say, and I don't have change, because I didn't want to pull out all this money. And I never forget, they would give me a $5 bill. Then I said, well, here's some extra papers for your friends. And so their friends would get excited. They got this paper that their friend bought for them. And I never forget, I went up to this guy from France, and he had been drinking a little bit, and he wanted the souvenir paper, and I said, I have no change. And he gave me a $20 bill, and I said, I have no change. And then he said, what? You have no change? Then he said, oh, that's brilliant. And then I gave him papers for his whole group, which his status with that group went out the roof. And I remember walking from the Speedway back home because I had all this money by being creative. Fast forward to when I was in college. I got elected president of the student body at Ball State University. And at that time, you had to rent refrigerators for the dorm rooms because nobody could afford to pay for a refrigerator. And so the student association had a refrigerator rental business that was separate from it was a for-profit company. And I said, well, why come we don't send this out to all the freshmen coming in so they can reserve their refrigerators? And they said, well, because it's an outside company. I dissolved the company and made the refrigerator rental business a part of the Department for Student Association. And we mailed out reservations to all incoming freshmen to reserve their refrigerators. And we cornered the refrigerator rental market that first day of the week of school, made $60,000. I hired students and stuff. And then the refrigerator rental companies wanted to sue us because they said it was unfair competition. They said, but as part of the student government, how are you going to sue? And people said, well, how do you come up with these ideals? And that's where I discovered that by being in junior achievement and some other things, that you could actually create a product, go ask investors to invest, thinking to sell them your product or service, and people pay for it. That's how this is beautiful. And I thought everybody should have a part of it. And just going back to the junior achievement story, I was a candidate for Officer of the Year. So all of us got a chance to go to Edward Jones. And they put us in groups. And I'll never forget, I was in this group. And whoever invested, got the greatest return on their investment, wanted to share stock. My group wanted to invest in blue chips. I said, no, blue chips are safe. It's not going to give you the return you want. And I convinced them after 20 minutes of arguing that what we want to invest in is what everybody has to have, but they can't go broke. And they said, what is that? I said, utilities. They're protected by the government, and everybody has to have them. We're going to invest in utilities and groceries. And when the board put up on the board who were, we had blew everybody out the water. And that's what I won my first share of recognition equipment, because I was part of that team and I argued for that position. And that's where I got an opportunity to see what it's like to be in a capitalism and create a product or service, fill a market need, a niche, and then provide it to the people. And then at the same time, be able to make money. And what I also discovered is that people of color were being left out because of redlining and some other things. And that what would it be like to create a situation where we create generational wealth that is distributed to our children and our children's children? And being a pastor, being in ministry, Most people don't realize that the Bible it's a commandment to leave generational wealth. I mean, it's we talk about all the commandments. We don't talk about that one. We are commanded to leave generational wealth to our children, and people don't do that. So that's the whole crux of it.
Why do you think that is? I mean, in some cultures, and when I say the colored culture, it's as though I've got to take care of my parents. It's always this generation needs to take care of the generation before them.
Mhm.
Where in other parts of the United States, like with me, that was never really part of my growing up thinking. I was always like, how am I going to provide for my next generation?
Mhm.
Why do you think the difference there is?
Well, somewhere along the line, the system got broken, and where we start going to work and not saving. When we look at the propensity to spend, we become consumer oriented. So people believe that if they win the lottery, for example, they think that they're gonna have a lot of money. But if your propensity to spend is 99%, it doesn't matter how much money you have because you're gonna spend it all. So at some point we got stuck at just providing for today and not putting something back for the future. And that's where generational wealth occurs, is that when you spend just enough to take care of yourself, but put some away, even if it's just 10%, put 10% away, then you create the opportunity to leave generational wealth. And then your parents don't need you to take care of them because they're doing the same thing. It's like the law of the harvest. You continue
Right.
to, you
How do
continue.
we break that cycle, though? I mean, we're too many of the United States are not. I mean, they're in the opposite cycle, if you will. They're not in the law of the harvest, like you're saying. They're in the opposite cycle. I'm all about me, all about what I'm doing, and quite often even living beyond what they are currently making, and it's nothing but debt. And then that becomes the inheritance, is the debt to the next generation. I mean, lots of people are dying today with still a mortgage.
Yeah.
And the kids may or may not be able to pay that.
My mother has a mortgage. She's 91. How is that possible? But her and my father would refinance their home over and over and over and just spend the money. Why does she still have a mortgage on the house at 91? And there's a song, pop culture song, that Papa was a Rolling Stone. And then they said, and when he died, all he left was alone. That's actually a song. And that's the cycle we have to break. That we don't leave debt, that we don't just spend just to be spending. And then on the flip side of it, we get so burnt by debt that we don't understand there's a such thing as called good debt. So, I have some people that taking Dave Ramsey's financial course, and he tells you that debt is bad. And what he's talking about is personal debt. So when you start working with people and attempting to get them to understand business debt is actually good. Using other people's money is actually a great thing. You get a return on investment that you wouldn't get if you use your own money. It's hard to break that cycle because they went to the other way, thinking that all debt is bad. And I said, no, you didn't pay cash for your car. There's certain debt that is great debt for you to leverage to create that generational wealth. And as both of you know, that one of the greatest ways to set yourself up for generational wealth is life insurance. Whole life, you make the payments over a period of time. It develops cash value, and at the same time covers you. And when I started in insurance back in the day, I was working for Mammoth Life Insurance, where you talk about the penny insurance, where you go collect every week. And I'm telling these people, I don't need a car. Can you just pay me for the year? And they were so in tune to just having that person come. And then I start packaging it with term insurance. This is before they had the universal life. I would package term with lots of term at the beginning and whole life on the back end. So you, as you shift, there's a shift because you need something different now that you're taking care of those early years. So there's a shift, and then Banker's Life started doing that. Then it became a package thing, but I was doing that before it even was a thing because it makes sense that you put a better hedge against now to make sure you have plenty enough to cover in case something happens now, and as you continue to live, it reverts itself. Then you leave wealth to your family. My son, just to give you an idea of it, on the court, my son is 19. He just called me today. Said, Dad, I I decided to take the job of the promotion. He's an assistant manager at a car wash. Guess what his salary is now? $55,000. He's 19. I can't even imagine having that kind of income at 19. And you know what the first conversation we had was about the 80-20 principle. Only spend 80, budget for 80%, put 10% in savings, and the other 10%, he said, tithes and offering, and or into a charity that you believe in. Whatever it is pay it forward, right? And then I said, and we're creating a non-for-profit, Fortune 7, which is being run by his mom. He said, oh, you mean I can give to myself? Great. And so this is a 90-year-old, which I've spent time with that ideal of breaking the cycle of poverty. That you do it one paycheck at a time. And that's
Love that. Say that again, breaking the cycle of poverty one paycheck at a time, with the
that's
secret
it.
being putting a little bit away for a future day and for generational wealth.
Yes. And then the next thing I said, so that means that we want to make sure your credit score is in the 750s. He said, well, I got work to do. I said, well, that's not hard work to do. It's really simple now because of the techniques and instruments that we can use. For example, people that pay rent, and a lot of people are paying rent, don't want to buy. They don't want the headache and go through all that. But now there's a service that will report your rent payments to the credit bureau. So you get the same kind of opportunity that people with mortgages get. And they report it for you at no charge. Their goal is to get you so you get more credit, so they want to offer you this credit. And I'm telling people it's about using information you don't know. So now you can get your rent reported like a mortgage. Credit score is going up by 150 points. And people don't get that's how you save money. Because now when you need credit, you get it for less money. Because you're demonstrating that you have money saved. And the law of the attraction that people don't get. And so that's why I talk about it, especially for people that have been locked out, not knowing how the processes work. So, man, when you got savings, man, it attracts more money. When they see that you have a pattern of saving money, people are running to give you money. You get an opportunity to choose. Now, when you get that opportunity, what are you going to do? And we know that wealth is generated by having 7 to 10 income streams. And one of the
You
things,
bounced around a lot with the idea that in breaking this cycle, one of the key points is proper education.
yeah,
I mean, at the beginning, it was all about college, right? I'm the first one to go to college. My kids are going to college. I think you said you have how many grandchildren?
20 grandchildren,
20 grandchildren and two greats,
2
right?
great, yeah. And
Um,
my young ones haven't even started yet.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have legacy with people, but that's not gonna be sustainable if we don't generate wealth. So
Right. Well, but what I'm getting at is the college education is great, right? And I
right,
don't take anything. However, even in college, the type of education that you've talked about, even with your son, the financial education is not found.
not no.
Scott graduated from the Marriott School of Business. Okay. And he could jump in right here and say, yeah, there's many things about money and how money works and how to generate wealth. It simply wasn't even taught even in that school. And that's one of the finer schools in the country.
Can I
Why?
ask a question, Scott?
Sure.
Scott, I
Yeah.
love the question. Did they teach you what a burn rate was?
No, and I was in the finance department in the business school.
Right. My COO has a master's degree in business administration, and I had to teach her what the burn rate is. So, when we sit here and I teach a course on the language of money, which you would think they would be teaching in the business school, right? They don't teach that. The language of money. So, if I want to ask for money, Scott, then that conversation should take no longer than 8 minutes or less. Because the investor is looking for certain words, certain things that they're interested in. They may not even like my project, but if they can see what the return is, how long and how I'm going to pay them for the risk they take, that's all they want to know, right? They want to know how long, how much, and what's my exit strategy? Because I want to be in there for 30 years. You go get a traditional mortgage, I want to be in there 5 years or less. How am I doing? And if I don't know what the burn rate is for what I'm doing, I'm never going to ask for enough money. If I'm manufacturing a product, I got to burn through some money to get to profitability. Agree? And if I have a factory that I'm producing a product and I tell them I need $250,000, they're laughing at me because they already know I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Now, if it's a cash only business, then my burn rate is a lot shorter, right? That I should be able to, with cash and I don't have receivables and stuff like that. I should be able to, the loan should only be 6 months to a year, depending on what I'm doing, right? They'll know that. They'll know if I know what I'm talking about. But it's not taught, like you said, Jason. It's not taught.
So how do we change that?
Okay. I'm so
That's
good.
that's the hugest problem that's facing America. I mean, there's so much. I mean, we talk about divorce. One of the biggest reasons for divorce is financial issues. There's an epidemic, in my opinion, of anxiety and depression, yada 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 yada. That's, in my opinion, it's all around money. It's all around finances, and largely it's this that people do not know I mean, that's one of the purposes of this podcast is an attempt to change that, at least say, wake up, people. And for those of you who listen, hopefully this is being useful for you. Please give us a review and a like and subscribe. But back to you, Paul. What do you think? What's the best way to change this?
So, Jason, I mean, it's almost like you picture me stuff that I've been waiting for, right, to answer this. So you see Fortune 7 that I have in the background, that logo. So what we're creating is the very thing you said that we need to have. We're creating a program called the Odyssey Series, where we're going to mentor small business owners, whether they start at mid-range or at another level, and mentor them on how to set that business up for wealth generation. And our purpose at Fortune 7, that's why we're moving it from a for-profit to a non-for-profit. And guess what our mission is? To eradicate the economic inequality caused by systemic racism for people of color through entrepreneurship, creating multi-million-dollar businesses, leaving legacies for their children and their children's children. our sole purpose is to empower them with the tools and language that creates generational wealth. So that somewhere out of my great grandkids, they're gonna have a picture of me on the wall somewhere. They're gonna say, "Who is that?" But that's oh, you got to know who that is. That's why we living in this house we living in now because of what he provided for us. So the ideal is to educate. If the school system is not going to do it, we could create a system where we educate ourselves, and then we go pay it forward by telling other people. I mean, when I teach people the language of money, about the burn rate, and said, listen, this is what you do, and sit there and do it, and let them see it. I had a guy tell me this, honest to God truth. He's doing a $300 million development down in Mississippi. His family bought the land right after the Civil War, so they were able to keep the land in their family since the Civil War. And he's out to raise capital, right? I have a friend that lives in London who's an architect that had connection with some investment individuals in Singapore. He was coming to the States because his mother lives here in Indianapolis, right? And I said, I'm going to set up a meeting, but this is my request, that your presentation is only 8 minutes. No longer. If you talk over 8 minutes, you're done. I sit there and prepped him for the meeting. We went to Joe's Boatyard out there, nice little restaurant out by Eagle Creek. The guy met us there, and he did that presentation in 7 minutes and 30 seconds. I said, what happens after this is you don't say another word. The next person that speaks determines what happens. And the guy started asking questions. We were there for another 45 minutes. Scott, what do you think happened? The guy was on the hook now. He was interested in the project, asking questions, and then he made this statement. He said, well, that's not big enough for my investors. And I said, oh, I'm so glad you said that, because our goal is to build 7 of these across the country. And according to my calculation, that's $1.5 billion in a real estate investment trust portfolio. And he turned around and lit up and said, now we'll get out of bed for that. It's the ability to understand who you're talking to, what their appetite is, and make sure you give them options. But that took me having a one-on-one with him. Now, the dilemma is that we can't transform the world doing this one person at a time, right? So now we're setting it up. So we have this Odyssey series. We're setting up a podcast as well to do the exact same thing that you're doing, to educate people and then have success stories that indicate this is what possible, that there is a such thing as a language of money. Let's not put all the onus on the corporations. It sounds like that you and your son are doing exactly what needs to be done. You taking your experience and sharing it with the rest of the world, right? And you
Not
know how many
just
people I've told about this? My whole ecosystem know I'm on this podcast, right?
sweet.
And so now that means I got 20 to 30 people in my ecosystem just with Barrett Enterprise that are going to be watching the podcast. And that's how we do it. It seems like it's a slow process, but now it's so rapid. And that's why we have a television channel. So we get to put on that channel information that we want people to have. That's why I have the media group. So we get to go tell people what we want them to know, not be fed what other people want us to know.
We're coming towards the end of our time here, and I feel like I would want to keep going. Maybe we'll have you back another time. Kind of as a closing question, you've got Fortune 7, you've got Barrett Enterprises. I mean, I've known you a little while, and I've heard you talk about some of the things you do. You're involved in some pretty exciting, big thinking stuff. However, what is the next mountain for you to climb? Like, where are you going? Because sort of throw it out there. I'm asking you to give us a big goal, saying this is where I'm heading, and then in the same breath, we're going to invite you to come back to the podcast when you've climbed that mountain or whatever it is.
Okay, so I reorganized Barrett Enterprise, and we had our first new board meeting in January of 2024. And when we went to South Carolina, we made a presentation to that church that has 73 acres, and now we're the developer from concept to completion for 73 acres. So what I'm experiencing, Jason and Scott, my oldest son, when he was growing up, he would wake up screaming at night, screaming in pain. And that's when I discovered there's something called growing pains, where his bones were growing faster than his external body. That's what we're experiencing now. We were not prepared for them to say yes, like right out the gate. So now we're pulling together resources to meet that opportunity. That was in January. And now the other companies, Beaming now has a lab. We have a Beam studio. We do full-length movie production, animation, commercial. And now we're working on putting together a portfolio of 100 programs that we're going to market to someone, not just one, but a set of programs that you can underwrite. We're doing that now. We're creating a meaning intelligence app that people don't want to make money just for money's sake, but what's the meaning? What's the value? So we're curating that. We should have that app out by the time I get to Magnify Your Wealth. And so that's the array of things that we're doing. So our next big hurdle is to get investment into Barrett Enterprise to assist us as we elevate. So we're looking at acquiring a $500,000 bridge loan for startup costs. And then I have 5 million shares authorized to the state of Delaware for Barrett Enterprise. And we're going to start generating capital so that we can expand on all these areas for the media, for the consulting, and for the real estate development. The 73-acre development is unique in that that's going to give us some sustainability. So we're doing a senior housing, affordable housing, we're doing a vertical farming, we're doing micro manufacturing, doing an aquatic center. We already got somebody that wants to build an aquatic center on there. That's the city within the city. So those are the big opportunities that we have. And if I can leave anything to your listeners, one of the things that I'm out to cause and create, I'm reading a book called Tribal Leadership, and it talks about the 5 stages that you want to be on. And the 5th stage is have a noble purpose that's bigger than you. And I think that when we start doing that, working together with each other, looking for opportunities to work together and not fight, then we can escalate the possibility of creating some of this generational wealth that will be here for years to come. So that's what we ought to do.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And one of my first questions when I see you again is, how's the app? I'm going to hold you to that. You said you put it out there. We're going to have it done by this time. So we'll have that done. Everyone that's listening, we'll put some in the show notes, the ability to contact Paul probably through Fortune 7, or maybe even Barrett Enterprises. You can let us know, Paul, which one you want. But so you have the opportunity. This guy is brilliant. In the few minutes that we've been able to talk to him, you can see the way his mind works. He's very, very creative. It's just, if you go back just to the lemonade stand, that was golden. And I don't know if you got along with the girl across the street. I can kind of see this competition between you and her. Like, yeah, I can do that.
We're best friends.
Oh yeah, that's good. I'm gonna be better. You have that in you that's really cool. And you're still doing it on a $1 billion scale now. That's really cool. Scott, I'll turn it back to you, baby, to bring us home.
Awesome. Thank you again, Paul. And just like Jason said, we will put all the links in the show notes down below to connect with Paul. If you'd like to connect with Jason or I, make sure to hit us up on one of our social media platforms, or just click on the show notes down below. We always put our links down there. Last, remember that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.